Almost 3 years ago, I embarked on my first ever playthrough of Pokemon Scarlet. And it wasn't perfect. While I loved most of the new Pokemon designs, the characters, the story, and the truly open world experience, there were a few things that I wish had gone differently. 3 things, specifically. The first was the technical problems. The lag, terrible frame rates, and general jankiness were pretty harmful to my experience. But thanks to the Switch 2, those problems are gone. It still ain't that pretty of a game, but now it runs great. So because one of my 3 problems has already been solved, I figured why not cover the other 2? This is the story of my second Pokemon Scarlet playthrough, done with the goal of redeeming the first one. The game begins as usual, running buttery smooth and already completing redemption task number 1. Play on the Switch 2. The next big change I made from the first playthrough was immediate, that being my starter choice. In my original playthrough, I did not choose my favorite of the trio. At least, not my favorite final form. Back then I chose Quaxly, which is my favorite of the base forms, but I don't care much for Quaquaval. It's fine, but a bit too goofy for my taste. My favorite final form Paldea starter is Skeledirge, but I couldn't use it in the first playthrough because of a higher priority. Armarouge. Armarouge is my favorite Paldea Pokemon of all of them, and overlapping fire didn't seem wise. But since I used Armarouge then, I can use Fuecoco now. I selected it and named it Charlie. Because, you know, like fire chars things. Frankly, I think it's a fantastic name for a fire specialist, and I think it's weird they haven't done that yet. Picking Fuecoco was the first step of completing Redemption Task 2, use Pokemon I should have the first time. It's a bit wordy, but like you get it. Beyond the starter, there were several other Pokemon that I wanted to use, but I either didn't end up using them at all, or I did use them, but just for a bit. I didn't finish the playthrough with them. This time, I planned to do right by those Pokemon and use them all the way through. During the earliest exploration areas, I caught several Pokemon, but the most important was Paldean Wooper. In my first playthrough, I used one that I ended up evolving into Clodsire, since Clodsire is one of my favorite Gen 9 Pokemon. Because, like, of course it is. How could you not like the Clod? In my first playthrough, though, I ditched Clodsire shortly after my Wooper evolved into it because I discovered its low base stat total, only 430. I regret doing that. I recall seeing comments back then talking about how they still had success with Clodsire because its BST can be deceptive. Low special attack does not matter if you always use physical attacks, and if you're already slow, then who really cares if you're even slower? Plus, with Water Absorb, that's 2 immunities, 5 resistances, and only 3 weaknesses. Clodsire would clawed its way back. The rest of the pre-Mesa Goza exploration was focused on training my team and filling it with placeholders. But as I did this, I kept my eye out for something incredibly important: a shiny Pokemon. Scarlet and Violet are widely considered to be the easiest games to find shiny Pokemon in because you can see so many Pokemon at once. During the initial release period of the games, basically everyone I knew found a random shiny during their playthrough, except for me. I spent over 40 in-game days playing and hunting and found nothing. While others, like my girlfriend or her brother or my friends, found one within their first few hours. For me to get my first Scarlet Violet shiny, I had to complete the entire Pokedex, get the shiny charm, and intentionally hunt for hours. But thankfully back then, I handled this bad luck with grace and maturity. I had defied the gods that had defied me and slain them in the process, because after all, what is a god to a non-believer? This time will be different. The enhanced performance on the Switch 2 doesn't just make the game run more smoothly, it spawns more Pokemon too. This was Redemption Task 3. Find shiny Pokemon without the shiny charm. It's been almost 3 years. The shiny gods had to have regenerated by now, right? Next came the lengthy school portion of the intro, during which I got to see some very exciting things. Look at the children, their frame rate, they're kicking normally. It's so lame that I'm celebrating this. Then once I was finally set loose, I got the invite to go to Kitakami, but opted against it. There was no DLC in the first playthrough, and since the point of this is to do the first one over again, but better, it'd be weird if I used it now. Instead, I headed west. In my first playthrough, I had gone east, but since Brassius is stronger than Katie and I didn't have a water or grass starter to fight the Titan Cloth, the Bug Gym was a much better place to start. Pretty quickly, I caught a Smoliv, which was not a Pokemon I wanted to use last time. I just knew I would need something for water types and Cloth. Once in Cortando, I challenged Katie immediately, and Terrafire Charlie swept her with ease. I then backtracked to head out Mesagos' East Gate and promptly caught a Knackley, the next Redemption team member. I used Garganical for a long time in my first playthrough, but I benched it in favor of Revavroom to have a fairy counter. I regret abandoning it because it is a super cool Pokemon, and I will not be letting it go this time. I immediately named the new Knackley Flavor because, you know, salt, flavor. Side note, other members of the team without nicknames, I hadn't figured out ones that I liked yet. I will nickname them at some point. I did a lot of exploring and battling in the canyons, eventually evolving Charlie into Crocolore. I then passed the Titan Cloth intentionally because while I did have Grass-type Smoliv and Ground-type Wooper for the battle, both of those are super weak until they evolve. So I passed Artisan and ran down to the beach by Levincia to see what water types I could find. And I happened to stumble upon a high-level Finizen within reach of a throw. I decided to catch it and use it, since while I didn't plan to use Palafin originally, I was open to it. It also gave me a strong water type to use right away, so I immediately went to use the Finizen, nicknamed Wonder for Wonder Woman, to defeat the Titan Cloth. Next was the Grass Gym, and the Sunflora Gym test was a huge breath of fresh air from the previous version. It was an infuriatingly poor experience the first time. Once in battle with Brassius, Terrafire Charlie swept the battle like he had done against Katie. After a bit of exploring and trying but really struggling to use Wooper, who was so weak that it couldn't seem to do anything in battle, I decided to head to the Mud Patch in the southeast. I hoped I would maybe find a shiny one there, but alas, none appeared. But I did find a high-level Clodsire, and opted to just catch that and use that instead to bypass the annoying training process. So I replaced the first Wooper and nicknamed the new Clodsire Claudius. You know, like the Roman name, Claudius. I will admit, it does kind of look like Clodius, but I assure you, it is Claudius. Shortly after this, I finally thought of a good nickname for Smoliv, Brawliv, named after my very silly proposed Smoliv evolution from a few months before the game came out. Hopefully, with this nickname, I will ensure that Brawliv will be sufficiently violent. I then flew back to Cortando and headed west toward the Titan Bombardier. I think that's how you're supposed to say it, because like a Bombardier? Bombardier. I'm just calling it Bombardier. That's probably wrong, but it sounds the least weird. I wanted to do this next to ensure I had the ability to swim on Koraidon in case I spotted a shiny out in the water, which scarily did spawn before I could access them. But then, on the way up the hill... Wait! Has it happened? It's happened! It's happened! Yes! Happiness is allowed! What do I do? That won't hurt it. Oh, wait, Clodsire knows Yawn. Yes! Yes! Oh my God, that's so exciting. I love Annihilate. This was perfect. Not only did I have the shiny I deserved, but it was a Mankey specifically. The last team member that I wanted to redeem was Annihilate. I used one for most of my first playthrough, but ended up moving on from it when its fighting type overlapped with Quaquaval, and its ghost type offensively overlapped with my Terra Dark Baxcalibur. But now, I could play through most of the game with a shiny one. And yes, Ghost will overlap with Skeledirge, but actually the only weakness they share is Dark, so that's pretty cool. And also, I've used 2 Ghost types on my team before and been totally fine, so this is gonna be awesome. Apt for this playthrough, I named the shiny Mankey Redeemer. You shall be Redeemer. So, I guess that's it, because I've already accomplished my goals. I'm playing on the Switch 2, I have the 4 Pokemon that I wanted on my team, and one of them is the shiny that I needed. Beat the game and video over, right? Wrong. You think after what happened last time, that one would be enough? One would have been sufficient the first time, but that ship left the harbor long ago. I'm on a brand new ship now that's faster, more powerful. It's got bigger propellers or something. Which is why the task was find shiny Pokemon, not find a shiny Pokemon. After the pain I felt last time, I better get more than one. Next, I fought the Titan Bombardier, and while Knackley needed to swap out for Clodsire in the first phase, Flavor did just fine against the second phase, thanks to Arven's Knackley tanking all the hits. Then Arven revealed his sick dog, and I mainly skipped past it because I already knew about this and I didn't need to go through all those feelings again.
I was not expecting the gut punch of feels.
Next, I journeyed north to battle Giacomo at the Team Star Dark Camp. I led with my fancy new shiny Mankey, terrestrialized, and got one-shot by the Pawniard's aerial ace.
Oh, that's a huge bummer.
Crocalor came in and easily defeated the Pawniard, but then the Starmobile was tough. Crocalor didn't do much damage, so then I used Clodsire to try to put it to sleep, forgetting that Starmobiles cannot be afflicted with status conditions. I feel very confident that the Team Star camps are the toughest battles of the 3 paths. Like, sure, the auto-battling part, that is trivial, but the boss battles themselves are often insane because of the Starmobiles. Starmobiles have insane stats with fantastic abilities and strong moves, so in many ways they're a lot like the Titan Pokemon, but you have to battle them after several other regular Pokemon. And unlike the Titan battles, a friend never shows up to help. And again, you cannot give them status conditions. Not even like pseudo conditions like Leech Seed or Salt Cure. As a testament to this, Ares' fighting battle was the only one that I lost in my original playthrough. I'm pretty sure, maybe there was another one, but that one was the most traumatic. I could have won that battle if I used potions, but I had wanted the added difficulty. This Starmobile battle, which I expected to breeze through, turned into a sequence of chip away with little bits of damage, take a beating, switch once the HP got low, and repeat. Finally, I got the Starmobile down to a sliver, and Flavor finished it off. But by the end of the battle, my team looked like this. Starmobiles. Woof. I reached Cascarafa and the desert, desperately wanting Brawliv the Smoliv to evolve because in the Smoliv form it is unfortunately extremely weak. Not long later, Flavor the Knackley evolved into Knacklestack, which just want to say, quite fond of this Pokemon. Looks kind of like a Minecraft frog. Next it was time for the Team Star Fire Camp. Knacklestack handled Torkoal slowly but surely, which worked for me since it let me stall out almost every turn of the sunlight. The sunlight that was happening at night. That is the weirdest weather. Like, we can agree with that, right? Like, all the other ones make sense at any time. But harsh sunlight at night or indoors, what are we doing? I brought in Crocalor to snarl a bit, since while you cannot status the Starmobiles, you can drop their stats. Then I brought in Wonder the Finizen to charm it and totally nerf its offenses. And then Mila was, conveniently, incredibly stupid. She used Screech several times, despite all of them failing thanks to Finizen's Clear Amulet. With its offenses crippled and it wasting half its turns, Wonder simply had to dive a few times to wear the machine down and eventually take it out. I then ran around the dry area north of Levincia for quite some time, focusing on 2 things: training up Redeemer the Mankey and hoping to encounter the next shiny that I was owed. The first was a success, and I got my shiny Primeape. The latter was a failure. No shinies appeared. But that was fine. More would come. It is destiny. After that, I fought the Titan Earthworm, which Charlie the Crocalor defeated easily. Next, I wanted to beat Iono, but Nemona challenged me first. Thankfully, Claudius dispatched her entire team swiftly, because not only did I outlevel them, but all 3 of her team members were weak to ground or poison. After Iono's Silly Gym challenge, it was time for her battle. This was the first one where I started battling set style. I didn't change it in the options, but I just always clicked no when it asked, and I refused to use any healing items. I decided to do this because I'm 30. Also, I technically already kind of did this in the first 2 gyms as well, but I only used Charlie in those, so it didn't really matter. The electric gym battle was not very tough, since I mistakenly thought she would be a higher level than she was. Additionally, I'd done this before, so I had some excessively effective strategies, such as Water Absorb, Ground-type Clodsire being wholly immune to any damage from Belly Bolt, and then the cool combo of Smackdown into Bulldoze against her Electric Levitate Mismagius. I promptly set off to do the next gym, the water one, and I was more nervous for this one because my only water-strong Pokemon was Dolliv, who was not, like, weak for this part of the game, but I wouldn't call it good. And Crabominable's 2 stabs are Ice and Fighting, both of which are strong against Dolliv. Turns out his Crabominable doesn't actually have an Ice move, but it does have a Fighting move, so scary. Brawliv immediately took a beating from Veluza's Pluck, so the next turn I Terrastalized to normal to remove that weakness. Doing that was actually somewhat of an oversight though, because it also lost me my resistance to water. But Dolliv survived the Aqua Cutter and Mega Drained down the Veluza. Dolliv once again barely survived an attack from Wugtrio, but it stayed alive with Shell Bell and Mega Drain healing. I swapped in Claudius, finished off the Wugtrio, yawned the Crabominable to sleep, then safely brought Dolliv back in to finish off the battle. Afterward, I trekked to Medali. Medali? I don't know. Oh, it is probably Medali. Medley, restaurant. Oh my god, I just had this realization this moment. I could have fought Larry immediately, but I decided I wanted both Crocolore and Primeape to be evolved first to have the ghost immunity so useful in normal battles. So I made my way to Tag Tree Thicket. No longer Lag Tree Thicket, thank Arcus! On foot to train and hopefully find my next shiny along the way. I did train, but I did not find a shiny. I ran around that thicket for so long, I didn't find crap! Afterward, I decided I was ready to fight the Team Star Poison Camp. Unfortunately, this started so badly, since Atticus's Skunk Tank flinched Claudius with a Sucker Punch. Yes, you heard that correctly. Took me a minute to figure it out too. It's cause the Skunk Tank has Stench, which has a chance to flinch with any move, but it's only a 10% chance. So instead of what I expected to do in this battle, which was sweep with ground type immune to poison Clodsire, it became a mess of switching, chip damage, and general nonsense. By the end of just the regular Pokemon, this was how my team looked, and the Starmobile had not hit the field yet. The only healthy Pokemon left were one that did neutral to poison, one that was resisted, and one that was weak to poison. It got worse right away when one Noxious Torque took Wonder down to red HP, while Aqua Jet did almost nothing. Claudius came back in and did tank the Spinouts, but it also didn't do much with Bulldoze. And after all this, in an act of desperation, I confess I used a potion. Look, I didn't want to, okay? But I got so unlucky in this battle, and Starmobiles are frankly so unfair. If you let me give it a status condition like it can give to me, this is a different discussion, okay? But Starmobiles are not sanctioned league battles. I feel like potions are more okay during them. After the healing, Clodsire and the Starmobile exchanged hits until eventually Claudius won. After, frankly, really struggling with 2 of the 3 Team Star camps, I resolved I would not do the last 2 for a very long time. Not only are they, of course, super strong, but at the time, I had just 1 Pokemon strong against Fairy and none strong against Fighting. Those 2 sinful machines loomed large and ominously. After that frankly awful battle, I spent a long time training. Then once Redeemer learned Rage Fist, I fully prioritized using it the necessary 20 times. Until eventually... Yeah! I kept exploring and training and not finding shinies until I evolved Brawliv into its final form, Arboliva. And I saw her face. I believe her. Then I started the normal gym test and Charlie evolved during that. Finally, my Skeledirge. Then it was time to fight Larry. Flavor led off with Stealth Rocks to hurt the Staraptor later, then Annihilate simply Drain Punched until the battle was over. Oh. That was actually super easy. Sorry, Larry. Nemona challenged me afterward, and while some of my Pokemon got low on HP, it was overall an easy win. I then began climbing Glaciado Mountain, and on the way, Flavor finally reached its final form of Garganical. I continued to climb and battle and explore, and not find shinies. I will admit, I was getting a little worried here. Then Wonder the Finizen reached level 37. Once that happened, I hopped into a Union Circle with my girlfriend Trinity, since you can only evolve Finizen by leveling up within a Union Circle at level 38 or higher.
I wonder how different it'll look. Oh.
Oh. I'm just climbing. Wait. Let me see if I can. That's so creepy.
It's so creepy because I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
You're just like.
That's really funny.
Oh my gosh.
All right, that was it. You can go back to playing Donkey Kong now.
Okay.
After reaching Montevenera and messing with movesets, I decided to fight Rhyme. I destroyed her. After baiting 2 Shadow Sneaks into Redeemer and tanking them with Terra Fighting, Redeemer's 150 power Rage Fist plus Charlie's Shadow Ball absolutely wrecked her team. I expect I would have dominated even without the stat buffs from the crowd. I spent some time training and upgrading movesets, specifically teaching Garganical Curse through the convenient modern-day egg move method. Then I finally decided to fight the Titan Great Tusk. In Phase 1, Palafin swapped out and Arboliva finished the job. In Phase 2, Palafin swapped out again, but then Arboliva got rocked by a fighting type move. That was fine though, since for the first time, Hero Form Palafin came in and won handily. One thing I want to note here, in my first playthrough of Scarlet, I had no idea that you could go back and catch the Titan Pokemon basically right after you beat them, until I'd gotten a ways into the post game. And I just want to say, I totally would have used the Titan Great Tusk if I had known I could do that the first time. However, I opted not to do that this time because it overlaps with Clodsire and Annihilate, who I wanted to use more, and also it just shows up way later in the game, which is a genuine downside because as we've seen, Clodsire and Annihilate have had a lot of usefulness prior to this point. I next made my way up to the Alfornata Plateau through Alfornata Cavern. I didn't fight the gym right away, instead running around training and looking for a shiny, which did not appear, what the hell? But eventually I decided it was time to battle Tulip. Well, I guess I actually had to battle Nemona first, but there's not much to report here outside finishing off her Masquerader with Terra Poison Clodsire. That was pretty cool. Can't believe I ever thought this Pokemon was bad. After Emotional Yoga, which was a night and day better experience compared to the game's original version, it was time to fight Tulip. After a flip turn from Wonder, I brought in Charlie against Farigiraf. While I initially went for Snarl, I then realized it would be better to get a Torch Song boost as I KO'd Farigiraf. Charlie then one-shot both Gardevoir and Espathra, but Florges tanked the Shadow Ball and KO'd Charlie. Hero Form Palafin returned to the battle and ended it with a Jet Punch, getting me my 7th gym badge. I then upgraded some held items for the team, getting a Black Sludge for Claudius and Metronome for Charlie, and then I messed around for a while. The Fairy Team Star Camp was next, and I was really scared, so I was procrastinating. And also looking for a shiny, which I still could not find. Look at how many Pokemon spawn all at one time. How are none of these shiny? I've spent so much time running around. I have played this file for 13 hours. There are so many Pokemon that spawn in so many places and yet nothing. I knew people who got multiple shinies in the old version with half the spawns. I know this probably sounds greedy, I already had one, but I have the initial disaster to make up for. Where are the shinies? Where are the multiple shinies I am owed? And then, at this point, in a moment of desperation, I regret to inform you that I did something that I promised myself I would not do. I shiny hunted. On the way to Grush's gym, which I was headed to since I realized it was actually weaker than the Fairy Team Star Camp. That just surprised me, so turns out that was actually next in line. I stumbled upon a Magneton outbreak. I had neither an electric nor steel type in my party, and the steel typing could be helpful for the fairy camp. So, I began to hunt. I KO'd enough to get the message in the corner twice. I used the picnic method to respawn them, then watched several ascend from the hillside. I could get just under 20 to show up all at once, and yet, nothing. Sure, I only spent around 20 minutes doing it, but I saw a minimum of 200 magnetons. And it was just so not fun. Gotta be real. Not a huge shiny hunting guy. It's just so boring. So I moved on, dejected and dismayed, and decided to take out my aggression on Grusha. Although I should mention, something weird happened during the gym test.
Yeah, what's wrong with my Koraidon? Why, look, it can't be covered in snow, because I'm not covered in snow. Now look, he's back to normal. What was that?
I have an answer. A cruel taunt! A false shiny Koraidon! The shiny gods taunted me again by showing me an alternate colored Pokemon for just a brief moment, showing me that it was out of my reach! And Grusha, he was just unlucky at this point. Because right during my greatest moment of wrath, he happened to be in my way. In my angst and fury, I destroyed him mercilessly. With Curse, Leftovers, Terastallization, and Salt Cure, Flavor the Garganical swept him with ease. And after beating Grusha, I didn't know what else to do. I had nothing to do other than to just keep running around the region, desperately hoping my next shiny would appear. I went to the areas I hadn't set foot in yet. First, the Northeast Mountains and Bamboo Forest. A shiny Scyther would be amazing, so I had Steel Scizor for the fairy camp, or maybe a shiny Bisharp, so I could use a super cool shiny King Gambit. I would have even settled for a shiny, stupid Golduck at the Dragon Lake. But no, nothing! The only place left on the entire map was the tan grass area north of Castle Royale Lake. If I didn't find one there, I wasn't finding one at all. So I flew to the lake's island, turned to head north, and saw my salvation.
Oh my God! Finally! This is amazing! I'd become convinced I wasn't gonna get any more.
Finally! And this was perfect! Again! I liked Palafin, but Azumaril's fairy typing gave me my first offensive stab against fighting and dragon. 2 boss fights still in my future. It even had an adamant nature. Through sheer force of will, I obtained the shiny that I so deserved. My second one, it is less dramatic, I will admit, but I got it! I can calm down a little bit. Yeah, this was great. It was perfect. The only problem was that it had Thick Fat, a useless ability on a water type, instead of Huge Power, the ability that makes Azumarill good. And while you can buy ability capsules in Scarlet, it's not until you beat the main story, and I didn't want to wait that long. So I immediately traded it to Trinity's game, used an ability capsule on it there, and traded it back. I would have done this exact same thing in my first playthrough. It's not like I could just catch another shiny Marill easily, so I do not consider this nefarious. I had to do some egg move shenanigans to teach Marill both Belly Drum and Aqua Jet, which, side note, really surprised me. Whenever I think of Azumarill movesets, I think of Aqua Jet, Belly Drum, and Play Rough, and I think it's weird that the first 2 of those 3 are egg moves. But once those were squared away, I evolved my shiny Marill into Azumarill, and named it Citrus, since it kinda looks like a lemon. And then, finally, the Fairy Camp, which is a very silly name for something that I was very scared of. Ortega led with his boring blue Azumarill, which I was prepared for with Claudius. Terra Poison Jab did less than half because it hit me with Charm first. Knowing it would keep doing this, I used Toxic. I then started a series of switches to avoid super effective moves, tanking the incoming hits, and letting Toxic do its job until Azumarill went down so I could send Claudius back on the field. Wigglytuff came out, and we repeat turn 1. Charm before I can attack, so Poison Jab only does half, and also Cute Charm infatuates me, which admittedly I immediately forgot about right after it happened, so I kept Claudius in and used Toxic, expecting another Charm, but Wigglytuff body slammed instead and paralyzed me. Aha! Not even to the Starmobile yet! Claudius hit through both Paralysis and Infatuation though, and then I swapped to Flavor, knowing I could tank hits and not get Body Slam paralyzed thanks to Purifying Salt. With Curse and a couple heavy slams, Flavor KO'd both Wigglytuff and Doxbun. But now, the Starmobile. I realized quickly that this Starmobile only had physical moves plus Confuse Ray, so if I could curse up enough, and assuming no crits, the Starmobile would do less damage than leftovers would heal. So that's what I did. Flavor cursed a lot, which I just read that line in the script and I realized it makes it sound like he's just like dropping F-bombs left and right, which is not what happened. Sometimes hurting itself in its confusion, but not every time, until it had maxed its defense stat with its attack just a little lower due to previous baby doll eyes. Then, with a couple heavy slams, Flavor won the battle. Clodsire and Garganacl, two Pokemon that I ditched in my first playthrough because I thought they weren't gonna be good enough, and they're actually very great. I like them so much. The only things left before each plotline's series of final battles were the Dragon Titan and the Fighting Team Star Camp. And while the levels are similar, the Fighting Star Camp is going last. Remember, I lost to that one in my first playthrough. So after some more running around and training, I decided to take on the final Titan. I handily beat the first phase, and then literally when in the middle of chasing it down, oh! Oh my God, I'm in the middle of the Titan! No way! That's crazy! Yes! Oh my God! That's crazy! I got the Mankey earlier, and then I went ages with nothing. And then twice in about 2 hours, in the same place, I've gotten 2 shinies. The lake has redeemed itself in dramatic fashion. Seems I was right all along. My power is unstoppable. It was destiny. What I was owed came to fruition. You know, in my first playthrough, when I finally got my shinies, I got 3 in one day. So it seems fitting that for this redemption playthrough, I get 3 total. Not 3 in one day, 2 in one day. But still. But I'm not done yet. Several tough endgame battles remain, and this playthrough isn't truly redeemed until I've won them all. So at this point, I added a 4th redemption task. Win all the endgame battles, set battle style, no healing items, and not lose once. Let's fight. After the Shiny Insanity, Arboliva defeated the last 2 phases of the Dondozo/Tatsugiri Titan with grace, elegance, and a whole lot of Giga Drain and Leech Seed healing. Afterward, I promptly used candies to evolve my shiny Dratini up to Dragonite. Then with my new flying type in my party, I took on the terrifying Fighting Team Star battle. Claudius quickly dealt with Toxicroak, then poisoned Annihilate, since I was terrified of powering up its Rage Fists too much. I then brought in Citrus to execute a perfect Belly Drum sweep, and her Annihilate froze me with Ice Punch! Oh, come on! Golly, I hate freeze! Rage Fist would have done more damage. Why didn't she go for that? Citrus then sat there like a frozen lemonade for several turns until eventually Toxic killed Annihilate. So I brought in Dragonite against Passimian to try to Dragon Dance sweep, terastallizing it to make it not die to another Rock Tomb. Unfortunately, I had to switch because Dragonite had no good moves for Lucario. Charlie KO'd Lucario, but then the Starmobile KO'd Charlie. I brought in Redeemer, who screeched twice, tanked 2 moves, and obliterated it with a powered-up Rage Fist. Glorious victory and redemption! Take that, Aerie, and your stupid freezes. You're not even a nice trainer. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. Also, I should note, at this point, I could have added the shiny Dragonite to my team permanently, and I didn't because I was too attached to all of the other members. Feels weird that I boxed a shiny pseudo-legendary, but I did. I would not have if I got it earlier. With the rest of them, we were tight. But with the defeat of Aerie, that meant I had finished all of the badges, meaning it was time for the final series of battles for the 3 plots. After some training, I decided I would do them generally in order from lowest to highest level, which meant first, the Elite 4. First, Rika. Brawliv beat Whiscash, and then because of Yawn, Citrus was forced to KO the Camerupt without belly drumming. Against Poison Jab Donphan, I terastallized to remove the weakness to poison, tanked the Poison Jab, and got poisoned by it. And then I forgot about Sturdy, and Citrus lost to Donphan. I was so excited to belly drum sweep, and at this point, I was 0 for 2. I switched around with Brawliv and Redeemer to use Rocky Helmet to KO Donphan, And in that process, Redeemer got poisoned. Ugh. But against Clodsire, Redeemer held on and used a progressively strengthening Rage Fist to take it down and win the battle. Next was Poppy, and this toddler got absolutely clobbered. Terrifier, Metronome, Skeledirge, Torch Song swept through literally her entire team. It was awesome. Larry's Tropius lead scared up my Garganical, but then he foolishly set up Sun as I switched in Skeledirge. With the Sun firepower boost, Charlie swept through 3 of his Pokemon, including Altaria.
Oh my god, I was resisted.
Eventually, Oricorio defeated Charlie, but Flavor came in and cleaned up, even hanging on against fighting Flamigo. Next was Hassel. The first 3 Pokemon were taken down by 3 different Pokemon of my own, but eventually Citrus came in to finish off Haxorus and Baxcalibur. No belly drum. Didn't really need it. Finally, Champion Geeta. Geetar done. Charlie beat Espathra, but was forced to take a beating in the process. Against Avalugg, I swapped around with Brawliv to set up grassy terrain, then used Redeemer to finish it off, but again, took a beating. Claudius came in against Go-Goat, but sadly fell to some Zen headbutts. However, this sacrifice did allow me to safely bring Charlie back in, but my Torch Song didn't kill.
Oh no. Okay.
Ooh, thank God she was dumb, otherwise Skeledirge was definitely fainting. Charlie was then able to finish off Go-Goat and King Gambit until Veluza took it down. Then Brawliv with Big Root, Grassy Terrain, Giga Drain healed up all its damage in the process of defeating Veluza. Finally, as Geeta terastallized her Glamora, I did the same, removed Brawliv's poison weakness, tanked a Sludge Wave, and fired back with a one-shot Petal Dance. I was officially a champion-ranked trainer, but next step is battling Nemona, who is the highest level of all of these end-of-plot trainers, so I decided I would save her for last. Instead, it was time to battle Clavel. Wait, hold on, freeze frame right here? Huh. Look at that smug grin. I'm about to wipe that off his... This battle was one of the most brutal of the entire playthrough. Flavor beat Oranguru, then of course Charlie beat Abomasnow, but due to Aurora Veil, it took 2 hits to do so. In came Poltegeist, and then, despite being at +2 special attack, Shadow Ball did not OHKO because of, again, Aurora Veil. But even after a Shell Smash, Charlie held on and won the next turn. Charlie had nothing for Houndoom though, so I swapped in Citrus on a perfect prediction Sludge Bomb instead of a super effective Dark move like I thought it was gonna be, and the Sludge Bomb poisoned me again!
Oh my god, what is with the poisoning today? That's ridiculous.
That is 1 Sludge Bomb and 2 Poison Jab poisons over the span of just 6 battles. Which I know, that doesn't sound like a lot, but they only have a 30% chance to poison each! Wait, really? Oh, huh. Fully thought it was 10. Well, okay, doesn't sound as bad now that I run the numbers. But it was still annoying! It meant, again, no belly drum! And in fact, it was worse than that. Aqua Jet could not one-shot the Houndoom, so Citrus lost. Redeemer was able to finish it off, but then against Amoonguss, a Pokemon that if you've watched any of Wolfie's videos, you'll know is very, very good, I was in trouble since Charlie was barely alive. So I used Redeemer the best I could, but missing a Screech plus the Toxic Hex combo was too much. Then Amoonguss yawned Claudius, forcing me to switch out. Finally, Brawliv came in, finished off Amoonguss's last bit of health, and after barely surviving a Brick Break from Quaquaval, it finally won the battle. I thought Clavel would be a pushover, and I ended that battle with 3 Pokemon fainted, 1 with 2 HP, 1 that was asleep, and 1 that was healthy, but it had not been before it just healed a bunch with Giga Drain. If this old man gave me that much trouble, what was next? Could I truly redeem this playthrough? Or would I actually lose a battle? Before the fight with Penny, I made an important change. I taught Claudius Toxic Spikes. I'd been wanting to do this for a while, but so many battles in a row had a poison type on their team that could just be sent in to absorb the Toxic Spikes. However, now that I had defeated Clavel and his Amoonguss, there were no more poison types in any major battle for the rest of the story. Against Penny, I immediately got to set up those toxic spikes against Umbreon. Then, finally, Belly Drum with Citrus. It swept through Umbreon and Jolteon and did less than half to Leafeon, because I had to use Aqua Jet because it outsped me otherwise, but Leafeon resists water and has insane defense, and then it KO'd Citrus with one Leaf Blade. Okay, I guess I got to do a little bit of Belly Drum sweeping, if you count 2 Pokemon as a sweep. Charlie came in to KO Leafeon, then stayed in against Vaporeon to hit it with +1 special attack, double-powered Stab Hex, which did not KO, and thus Charlie fell to Hydro Pump. Good God, some of these evolutions are so bulky! Redeemer finished off Vaporeon, then did some damage to Flareon before I brought in Claudius, who, full disclosure, I fully forgot did not resist fire. And it got walloped by Flare Blitz so bad that Flareon actually KO'd itself. Finally, with Sylveon, finished off by the combo of Flavor and Brawliv. Again, half my team taken out in a battle that I thought I would breeze through. I was really starting to worry that I could have a real loss and thus fail my final redemptive task. With the wholesome plot of Starfall Street complete, I challenged Arven at the lighthouse during a frankly very aesthetic sunset. Claudius set up 2 layers of toxic spikes, but then as I brought in Brawliv, it got paralyzed by Body Slam. It finished off Greedent, and then Charlie beat Scovillain with Hex, which pairs quite fantastically with toxic spikes. I brought in Brawliv for Garganical, but after a super effective body press and full paralysis, I pivoted to Redeemer and terastallized it to pure fighting to ensure I could kill. Close Combat did just that. Toedscruel was a huge problem though, with super effective moves for my entire team, except Redeemer, who was in the battle and had lowered defense. I predicted a grass attack and swapped to Charlie, who just got put to sleep. So then I had to swap to Brawliv, who got KO'd by Sludge Bomb. Finally, I brought Redeemer back in, who close combat KO'd the Toedscruel. It did the same to Cloyster right after. It would have done the same to Mabostiff. Side note, I still feel bad for battling this dog. And especially, like, poisoning it. That feels, like, really wrong after what it went through. But the doggy was faster. Flavor came in to do its Curse Salt Cure combo, but it fainted first, right before poison damage took the dog out. Felt good to win. Felt bad to defeat the formerly sick dog with poison. At this point, there were only 2 battles left, Nemona and Sada. And these battles are supposed to be tougher than the ones I had just did. But the last 3 had, again, taken out half my team in the process. It was truly getting dicey, but there was nothing else I can do but keep going. I led with Claudius again, yawning Lycanroc, but Drill Run did too much for me to tank another one. So I swapped to Brawliv for terrain healing on Claudius, then brought Claudius back in to set up the toxic spikes, but Lycanroc only slept for 1 turn. However, it set up Stealth Rocks instead of Drill Running. This gave Claudius enough health to survive another Drill Run and set up the 2nd layer. Brawliv came back in to beat Lycanroc, and then I swapped to Redeemer against Pawmot, ignoring the fighting damage. Double Shock did a ton because of a crit, but that powered up Rage Fist, which didn't KO Pawmot, but the poison damage did right after. And then Redeemer went crazy in the best way possible. It Drain Punched through both Dudunsparce and Orthworm, keeping it alive. The hits stacked up too, so by the time it attacked Goodra, Rage Fist was at 200 power and easily one-shot it. Rage Fist might be my new favorite move in all of Pokemon. It's so broken, and it's definitely getting nerfed in the next generation, so I'm gonna enjoy it while I have the chance. Meowscarada did KO Redeemer, but that was fine because it allowed for a poetic story face-off between the 2 Terra starters, which of course Charlie won. So that meant Nemona's battle went shockingly smoothly. I only had 1 Pokemon faint. Maybe I have a chance. I won't go into detail on all the story beats of the descent into Area 0, but I will say that replaying this part reminded me of how much I appreciate Scarlet and Violet's story. This was so interesting and unique the first time, and I only wish we could have played it on the Switch 2 from the beginning. There were so many wild Pokemon, and since you're forced to be on foot during this part, a lot of times I struggled to avoid them. Then finally, I reached the bottom for the final unscripted battle of the game, AI Sada. And I came prepared. Instead of Claudius, I led with Charlie so I could burn Slitherwing, allowing Claudius to better tank the Zen Headbutts. No crits occurred, so I successfully set up my Toxic Spikes. Once those were there, Charlie came back in and KO'd Slitherwing. And while I could have kept going, I knew Brute Bonnet's Sucker Punch would be a problem. Instead, I swapped to Redeemer, knowing I could heal Sucker Punch damage with Drain Punch and power up Rage Fist in the process. With an attack and some poison damage, Brute Bonnet fell. And then came Scream Tail. And despite Redeemer being slower and weak to Fairy, I decided to stay in and attack. And the play rough missed.
God, that was risky, but it worked out.
Against Fluttermane, I had to switch, knowing it would KO with either of its stabs. So I swapped into Flavor, who tanked a Purifying Salt-resisted Shadow Ball. With Assault Cure and Heavy Slam, Flavor got the win. Brawliv easily outmatched Sandy Shocks, and then I sent in Citrus for Roaring Moon. While a play rough miss made things scary, Citrus finished strong and won the battle.
Yeah! I nailed that battle.
This was one of the best final battles that I've ever had. I played set with no healing items, yet not only did none of my Pokemon faint, but all of them hit the field and got exactly 1 KO. Even Claudius, whose Toxic Spikes dealt the final blow to Brute Bonnet. It was a perfect battle with a team that I had grown very fond of. After the Koraidon fight, the game was complete. So in the end, I got to play on the Switch 2, use a team of Pokemon I've now grown very attached to, found 3 shinies, 2 of which stayed on my final team, and won every endgame battle in style. Every imperfection of my first Scarlet playthrough has certainly been redeemed. Just in time for the next game. Thanks so much for watching. If you never saw or want to relive the story of my descent into madness of my first Scarlet playthrough, you can check that out right here.